Well, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and get the meeting started. We do still see some folks joining, but in the interest of time and for those who are here, we'll go ahead and start the session today. And appreciate you joining our session on leveraging technology to expand your business and drive profitability. Also, as we mentioned, means to help expand one particular area, your CMMC revenue and business opportunities. My name is Tom Leahy. I am the head of sales and business development for SureShield. We are a software provider of security, compliance, and what we call integrity management solutions used by many, many organizations like yourself, service providers who are looking to leverage technology to expand the business opportunities that they have and also make things more efficient for themselves. And I'm joined today by our CTO, Chandi Bilagu. He, as well as our CEO, are the product experts behind what you will see a little bit later in the presentation today, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have as it relates to our technology. We're going to touch a little bit in terms of the agenda on some of the compliance and security trends we're seeing in the market. Those of you, if you are MSPs or service providers, are certainly hopefully seeing the benefits of a lot of the changes that are taking place and the needs that are out there due to a number of the cybersecurity issues that continue to increase for all companies. What that means in terms of potentially new service opportunities for you to perform. Obviously, as a provider, what some of the challenges to scaling your business can be, and then how you can leverage technology like that of SureShield's to acquire more clients and provide more services to your clients in a more efficient and effective manner. And then we'll give you a brief overview of the SureShield MSP Partner Platform, take any questions, and then, of course, for those of you who may have interest, there is an offer to actually test out the solutions as well. We will take a couple of very brief polls during the course of the presentation, and then we'll go ahead and end with any questions that you may have as part of the presentation as well. Please direct those questions to the Q&A portion of Zoom. And why don't we go ahead and get started? So really, what are some of the things we're seeing in the security and compliance marketplace today, the trends that we're seeing? Obviously, the cost of cybercrime last year alone is in the area of close to $6 trillion. There's many reports out, as many of you probably have seen, on businesses, small businesses in particular, looking to providers like yourselves to take on more of their IT security, IT management, and that it's expected that that business at the MSP market will continue to increase at a clip of close to 15% per year over the next 5 years. So opens up a lot of opportunities for those of you that are servicing in this marketplace. Compliance obviously is a big driver of needs to do things and requirements to do things in order to get contracts, to be in favor with the industries that you're serving. And so the compliance-driven security as well, and the purchases in that area are continuing to accelerate at a very significant clip, close to 30% a year. And what that means for providers like you is obviously to offer more services to help organizations become compliant with whatever the specific frameworks are that they have to deal with. And we'll touch on some of those in this presentation. And of course, there are new government mandates, one being the impending CMMC process for anyone that's in the federal government related to Department of Defense contracts. Today, all providers have to be NIST 800-171, I won't say compliant, but have to complete those assessments and submit those to the DoD. And going forward, they're actually going to have to go through, depending upon the kind of data that they're managing, a full-on third-party audit, and something that can't be escaped if you want to continue to do business in this arena. Obviously, for folks that are in healthcare, you have HIPAA-related issues. In finance, you have a number of things like PCI and others that you have to comply with, SOC compliance. So a lot of different opportunities for providers to help their organizations or the companies that you're servicing take on more services as they're going to be needing them. And we've seen enough information today in regards to the continued increase in the types of security and data breaches, some of those taking place by foreign governments, or at least representatives of foreign governments. And really, there is what we might call a cyber war going on right now. And nobody is immune to it, from large companies to small businesses. And actually, the attacks that are taking place even more so are on those small businesses, oftentimes because they don't typically have the infrastructure in place to deal with that. And it's also why they are now seeking services with other providers like yours to help them in those areas. So what are the opportunities, the growing opportunities today? Obviously, there's a significant increase in security breaches and data hacks. And so companies are needing help with organizations that can help them put safe processes in place and continuous processes in place to help protect their businesses. There's a significant increase in compliance requirements, regulations and audits that are required, whether that be HIPAA, CMMC or NIST, SOC. Those continue to increase at a significant clip, and more companies are looking for outside organizations to help them prepare and be ready to have those requirements in place. Clearly, there's a shortage in talent in the industry itself, which is leading to organizations to look for third parties who may have that talent to help provide those services for them. And more industries are moving from what we might call a passive protection to a more active detection and risk mitigation, getting out ahead of it before things actually happen. And so there are a number of things that you can do as a provider to offer these types of services to your customer base. And just touching on what are some of those compliance drivers, we mentioned in the financial areas, you got the FFIEC, you have NIST and CMMC, there's ISO, there's various types of state breach laws. For anyone that's dealing in the federal government in any capacity, there are now these 889B requirements where organizations that have any of these types of contracts are having to attest that they are not working with any banned currently Chinese telecommunication companies, and you can be assured that those will continue to increase given other foreign hostile entities out there like Russia, Iran, and even in China, as we well know. And right now, that is what we would call an attestation requirement. However, if you don't have the proof to back up your attestations, you could be facing things like false claims and the like. So tools to help you manage that whole process become compliant. And as we mentioned, a driver in the new DoD and CMMC market, there's estimations that service market opportunity could be close to $15 billion. There are over 300,000 suppliers alone, whether they be manufacturer providers, service providers, software providers, to the Department of Defense. And all of them are going to be facing a requirement to now go through either a third-party audit, a more stringent self-attestation process if you are at what they might call a level 1 component, and also go through obviously these third-party audits. And as such, the needs for clients to make sure that they are that you are helping them go through an assessment, identifying gaps that they may have in that particular security framework that they're dealing with, and helping them close those gaps, helping them identify where their critical data lies. In the case of the CMMC or the DoD, that's your COI data, but obviously with areas like HIPAA and the others where that PHI data resides, and how you are providing the proper tools to help protect that information. So services to help streamline, protect, and prevent infiltration or exfiltration of the critical data that you are working with. All of these organizations or all of these requirements require regular ongoing, what they would call vulnerability management, meaning looking out at within the environment and identifying where vulnerabilities may exist and how to go about not only identifying, but stratifying the risk of those, as well as employing remediation processes to eliminate that risk. And those are critical components of things like the NIST assessment, is not only doing it, but also demonstrating remediation processes. So it provides a very, very significant opportunity for you as a provider to help these companies in compliance-related issues, in vendor management-related issues, in data protection issues, in scanning and vulnerability-related processes that they'll all need to have. And really the estimation, if you were to take that across all of these organizations, is more than $50,000 a year worth of potential new revenue. So what are some of the limitations to scaling these services? Obviously, as a provider, you want to be able to take on as many customers as you can, offer as many services as you can, without jeopardizing the integrity and the quality of the services that you're providing. And that can become a challenge scaling-wise because of issues like the limitations on the available talent that you may have at your disposal. How can you make the best out of the talent that you have currently and make them more efficient? Scaling issues in terms of the number of customers that you can effectively service. If you don't have tools in place or have good processes in place, it may limit the amount of new customers that you can take on or new services that you can offer, and therefore limit the amount of revenue and potential profit you can make. And there can be issues in terms of implementing new services. How can you easily turn on new offerings for clients without making it super inefficient or hard to scale up? And then, of course, there's the challenges of implementing new services. If you are having to employ or go on site or introduce new technology into those environments, that slows down your ability to actually provide those services and also to recognize the revenue for those services. As you know, if you're providing a more, what I would call service, say compliance as a service, you can recognize that revenue in a much more efficient manner, and therefore obviously increase the value of your business as well. So what are some of the opportunities for expansion and new customers? Obviously, organizations need data security, and they need that on a regular basis. So there's data security as a service. Many MSPs are looking into how they can make their offerings more continuous as opposed to what I might call one-on type consulting engagements, how you can provide more predictable and regular revenue coming into your organization. And that goes by offering services around the types of components that they may need. So data security as a service, vulnerability management as a service, because they all are going to need this. Compliance management as a service. Compliance is not a one-time thing, meaning there will be new requirements, there'll be new changes. There's what we might call a continuous compliance need, because you need to always be looking at where you stand today. And that's hard to do if you're doing it on an ad hoc point in time basis. And then there will also be needs for third-party risk management services. So downstream vendors, in particular in the Department of Defense areas, there are 3 issues, that obviously need to be met to meet current contract requirements and what will be future contract requirements. Those are proving that you have processes in place to evaluate and manage the vendors that you're working with to make sure you're not getting any bad players into your environment. There's the integrity issues around 889B, attesting that you're not working with any of those. And there, of course, there is the NIST and soon to be CMMC compliance requirements. So a lot of different opportunities for services that can be added to your customer base. And just briefly, before we go into how we at SureShield are helping with those processes and helping with those scaling components, wanted to just take a brief poll of the folks that are here in terms of, in attending this particular meeting, what are some of your primary growth-related interests for your organization? Is it efficiency in managing current customers, efficiency in adding new services? And we will go ahead and end the poll in a minute. I see it seems to be about a 50-50 response rate from those who are joining us today around either looking at ways to more efficiently manage their current client base, and then others in terms of effectively wanting to add new services to the clients that you're servicing. So thank you for that. We'll go ahead and close that poll and talk now a little bit about how SureShield and the SureShield platform helps. And we'll also talk a little bit about how it is constructed. So around the services that we help our organizations with are around what we call 4 different areas. Under the domain or auspices of what we call ComplyShield, we offer what I would call semi-automated solutions to help conduct and manage any kind of compliance control assessment you need to do. We augment that with additional technology to actually automate a lot of those processes, meaning we run what we call compliance scans on an environment, and we can pull that data into our compliance assessment as backup supporting evidence, because any type of assessment you're doing is going to require not only you answering a question in terms of being compliant, non-compliant, or in some kind of remediation process, but the proof and the evidence that you that can back up a response to a question. And so with our compliance assessment, beyond the assessment piece, we also bring in what we call a compliance assessment scanning tool that can pull that data and then allow you to have that as supporting evidence for either having something being compliant, non-compliant, and then streamlining what we might call the plan of action and milestone process. Under our Security Shield domain, we have a couple of different offerings. One of those is our scanning and vulnerability management tool. Again, this particular solution does not require you to be on site. It actually allows you to launch a scanner that will spawn out into a client's network, both internally. There's an external scanner for anything that's what we call web-facing applications. And we also have remote scanners for those who have folks with computers that are not connected within the network. And this became a bigger issue after COVID because a lot of people were going home and working outside the network. So we've brought all 3 of those components together to allow you to do comprehensive scans of your whole environment, identify where issues may exist, and then more importantly, give you remediation information on how to fix those. And so as a service, as an MSP provider, you may want to do either provide that information to a client to help them understand what needs to be done, or in many cases, some of our clients, the customers that we work with, are also offering the remediation services as an additional revenue opportunity for them. And they get information on that to help them very quickly remediate those issues and provide that service back to the client. We also have a tool called SureShield DLP, that's data loss protection. What this does is it allows you to identify critical data in an organization's environment and then set rules in terms of how that data can move throughout the organization. So again, in the case of something like CMMC, it meets a critical requirement in terms of identifying and protecting that CUI data. The basic mandate of the whole CMMC process is protecting that critical information. We also have vendor management solutions that allow you to do third-party risk assessments on your vendors and meet the requirements that you may have with the government to prove that you have implemented that type of a process. And lastly, around what we call our Integrity Shield tool, we offer solutions that will allow you to identify and make sure you do not have any of your 889B, you meet the 889B requirements, meaning you're not working with any of those issues. And we do this under the auspices of the SureShield self-service platform. We call this Partner Shield. All of our MSP partners and distributors get their own white labeled version of this. I'm going to show you a little bit of how that works, but it allows you to have your own white label version, to also customize it as for your clients, to have their own white labeled access to these products or offerings. And then it gives you the opportunity to add any various types of offering that you may want to do, whether that's around your third-party risk assessment, your data security solutions, as we mentioned, or the compliance offerings that you may have. And again, we do this with a platform that basically allows you to take the SureShield offering and manage it on your own, implement your own customers, turn on the services you want for those customers, and do it in a very simple, easy methodology that allows you to manage all of those customers in one environment. We also integrate this with other project management tools like Monday, or look to pushing information to, for instance, your ticketing processes as you are identifying issues that you're going to resolve on behalf of those customers, and push that into your ticketing systems to close those issues out as well. So I'm going to pause here briefly, and I'm going to go ahead and open up our Partner Shield platform. Now, I want to mention that come next month, we are doing a lot of continued enhancements to this platform. So you will actually see even more and more offerings and more efficiencies that are provided through this solution. But the basic access and the use is going to be very similar. So I'm coming in right now under the auspices of what we're calling Acme MSP, right? So I'm acting like an MSP myself. I'm going to sign in. And what this will first bring me to is a dashboard that helps me understand a lot of things that may be going on with the customers that I have, whether there are certain alerts that I need to be aware of, whether they've run some scans, for instance, that I need to take a look at, or any types of reports that I may have pushed out to those customers. So you first of all get a full-on dashboard view of all the customers you have in your environment. And I want to give you an idea of how simple and easy it is to actually go about doing things like adding new customers, adding new services. So you can see in our tools section, there's a number of different things that we have in terms of the ability to co-brand and to co-brand for your customers themselves. I'm going to go to this area, it's called Manage Customers, and you'll see under the auspices of Acme that I have, I believe, about 9 customers that are getting managed within this environment. And each one of these customers have different services that they may be running, for instance. So if I wanted to go in and, let's say, either add a new customer, or let's go through the process of just saying we're going to add a new one, first of all. It's as simple as kind of a 3-step process. Identifying that organization, if you want uploading logos to personalize that to them, creating a default admin at that customer. And we do make it available to you to, for instance, not necessarily allow that customer to have access. It's all dependent on you in terms of how you want to manage that process, whether you want to use the SureShield tool to present all of that data, or whether you want to be able to give your customer access as well to look at that information. So for instance, if there's a disabled email notifications, that customer would not necessarily be invited, but you would have access to a view of all the services and all the information that customer is using. And then it's as simple as identifying the modules that you want to add for that customer. So in this case, if we were adding a new customer, you can see I can determine, for instance, under Security Shield, what are the services I want to turn on? Is it internal scanning? Is it perimeter and external scanning? Under the Integrity Shield, do I want to do 889B? And it's really as simple as just clicking on these and adding the services that you want. So for instance, if this was a DoD-related customer, maybe I want to turn on the level 2 CMMC services as well. And you'll notice as well in our subscription types, we give you 3 different types of offerings as a provider. One, we provide you with a demo environment. That environment allows you to demo the products and services out to the customers that you may be soliciting. We also allow you to conduct trials, so we can allow you to turn on a trial if you want to give them a taste of the service before they actually commit to you from a pricing standpoint. And then once they've done that, you can activate that client and turn them into an active customer. Just a note, if they are trialing, the data that is in that trial can get pulled forward into their active customer use as well. But we have a number that oftentimes want to give them a little bit of a flavor to help them get enticed before they commit. And we provide that as part of the offering here as well. I'm going to exit out of here. And then just to say the same for a current customer. So let's say that you've now have a current customer and you want to turn on a new service for them. It's as simple as just pulling up that customer and indicating the same thing. You can say, I want to edit that customer and add new services, and you would just come back in the same and turn on whatever that service is that you want to now add to that customer. So very flexible in terms of how you can utilize the services that come from us and make those available to the customers as you help them with that. I'll also note, as part of the portal, we provide you a lot of what I would call customer engagement and selling tools. We have white labeled product slicks that can be used around all the products. We have presentations, we have videos that can be used to help you in your selling efforts to bring customers on. So I want to give you a view in terms of these solutions at a customer level, both in terms of how you can look at them and how your customers can look at them if you were to turn them on. I'll start with the Comply Shield solution. And again, these top 3 tiles really relate, first of all, to what we would call the compliance offerings. In this customer demo environment, I have also turned on what we would call the security scanning components for them as well. So each one of these tiles represents a different type of service and a different type of offering. I'm going to go ahead and give you an idea of the Compliance Shield components. So as I mentioned, as you turn on controls, in this case, we've activated the CMMC and the NIST 800-171 controls for this client. A note, we have done all the crosswalks. So there is no need to necessarily have to do both. If you are conducting one, you can immediately crosswalk that data and have that relevant not only for the current NIST requirements, but for the future CMMC requirements as well. And you can see when it's gone into this, I then am presented with what I would call a filter. And this is just a workflow filter that allows me to look at my data however I want. So for instance, if I just wanted to look at the CMMC level 1 controls, I would filter on that data. it would take me specifically to those 17 level 1 controls. Conducting the assessment or conducting these is really simple. You just basically click into that hyperlink to that particular control. It will bring you up the answers. It allows you to add comments. It allows you to upload evidence as proof. As I mentioned, we also do compliance scans, which will bring in evidence within the system to match to a particular control as well. And this is what I would call a continuous monitoring tool. So anytime you're updating this, all the previous response history will get cataloged and captured. We also provide you and the customer with a lot of good, what we would call knowledge information to help them understand how to interpret this question, how to implement this particular requirement. All of our solutions come with packaged policies. Now you have the ability to either leverage the policies that SureShield has, or if you've already developed, say, your own policies for CMMC or NIST or HIPAA, you can easily import those policies into our system around those controls. And the beauty of what we have done with those policies is we've mapped them to the controls as well. So anytime you bring those in, you'll have the ability to actually have that automatic mapping happen there. And I'll show that to you when I go into the policies briefly. But the system will provide you information on supplemental guidance, the kind of evidence that you would need to support answers to those questions. And it's as simple as doing that to basically go into this process and answer. Again, you can click through these if you're in those one by one. You can filter, as I mentioned, and you can even, for instance, assign. So there's workflow built into this. If I wanted to say, for instance, to assign this data out, I could actually assign it not only internally to a user of my system, but I could even assign it outside. So if I wanted somebody outside my organization to help answer a few of these questions, it's as simple as getting their email address, their name, and giving them a completion date. And then they would get a web form that would allow them to only answer those particular questions. So it provides a tremendous amount of efficiencies and effectiveness in managing this whole process. All of our compliance solutions work in that fashion. And as I mentioned as well, we also provide policies. So if you wanted to even take a view at a policy level in terms of how you're complying, you can see here again, it's showing me the various policies related to this particular area. And in the case of my access controls, because there are 22 controls that are linked to that particular policy, right now it's showing me that this is non-compliant. And the reason being that I have one of the controls that is not compliant. And again, very quickly, I could just hyperlink to that and get to that particular control and see why it's listed as not being compliant. In this case, we're right now addressing it with the system security plan and the POAM. The policy itself, as I mentioned, we provide those white labeled policies. Again, these can be edited. You can use ours, you can edit ours, and or you can upload the policies that you may have into the system. And as I mentioned previously, it shows you the control mapping to all those. So if you were to bring all yours in, those maps would already have been completed for you, allowing you to do that evaluation at both a control and a policy level as well. Now, most importantly, what comes out of this are the outputs and the reports. So again, if I were to go to my compliance reports, we have really hundreds of different types of compliance-related reports. So you can run reports on compliance. This will give you views at a macro level of how you are complying. So in this case, if I wanted to just say and filter this on NIST compliance, it would pull out and generate a report on compliance for me. An executive summary, it would show me where I stand. It would show me who's been using this, what are the trends if I've been doing this over time, and really what were some of the remediation suggestions and gaps that I've identified in here that can be shared with that client. We've also automated all the DFARS recording requirements. So if you are working with customers that are in the DFARS area, you will see, or that are with the DoD, you'll see that we've already generated for you, based upon that, the plan of action and milestone reports. The system security plan is fully automated, and the report on compliance is fully automated. So anytime you're updating that, it will generate and change that assessment score for you. All of this is information that is needed currently today to submit to the SPRS, and in the future will be a requirement, as we know, with CMMC. So let me pause here. I'm going to step out and go back now to the security related items for vulnerability assessments. And again, this is a really simple and easy tool to launch for your clients. It's as simple as basically downloading a network scanner or a remote scanner, depending if that has to go out onto a computer, and then running that scan. Our system will automatically identify all the assets within the network and then allow you to configure how you want to run the different scans on that environment. The timing, the frequency, it allows you to even pick different components of IPs, subnets, and the like. You have complete and full control over this. And it does not require you to sequentially do this. We have run into other companies where you cannot run scans, what I would call simultaneously. So they're having to almost, in order to run these for the current customers that they have to schedule them on different days and different times, because the scanner cannot run across multiple clients. In our case, it can run at any time across any client. You can schedule the timings as to when you want to run those scans very easily. And it does not require any on-site need for you in order to do that. What that leads to when you run a scan is information on what that data is providing to you. So you can see in this environment, because we're running scans, it's showing me that I have 282 hosts in this environment, over 3,000 services that are being run, and we've identified over 12,000 vulnerabilities. Hopefully, this is not the case with your clients and not what we would normally see, but of course, it then allows you to drill in at various levels. If I just wanted to look at the ones that needed urgent attention, I could click directly into those. If I wanted to look at the full environment, it's going to show me all those assets. And for instance, if I wanted to scale and say, just show me those that had the most critical issues, again, it will segment down on those. I can click into these. And if I've run these scans over time, you can see how the varying degrees of risk have changed on that particular asset as it has been run over time. Not only how this has changed, it's going to show me what services, for instance, are running on that environment, what are the installed applications, what are the vulnerabilities, and more importantly, what are the remediations for those. Now, this is at an individual asset level, again, to help you in terms of working with your clients and helping them understand what they might want to do and generate more services. You have a lot of different reports that can be run out of the system that can be presented to that client to help them determine you adding and continuing more servicing for them. So things like a top remediation report. In this case, I'm going to filter on what we would call a top 20 remediation suggestions based upon the scans that have been recently run. And you'll see the system outputs a very nice report that gives you an executive summary. I want to just note briefly that all of our reports can be exported into PowerPoint, into PDF, into Excel, and they can also be scheduled. So if you want to have a report like this run on a regular schedule, you can schedule it and determine who are the people that you want to get that report, how often you want them to get that, all of that can be auto-generated for you as well. And in this case, you can see if I were to run a top 20 remediation, it shows me that I would need to run that on 202 of my hosts. It would remediate over 98% of my vulnerabilities and improve my risk profile. Very valuable and easy information to present to your clients. In the interest of time, I'm just going to show you a couple of other tools, and then we'll go ahead and take questions. Again, as I mentioned, we have a solution that allows you to identify critical data in your environment. So in the case of HIPAA or the DoD, CUI data is important. We have a solution, an endpoint that can go out, identify that critical data, where it exists, also how that data has moved if it has been exfiltrated, and it even gives you the sensitivity and risk of that data. In this particular demo, you can see that I'm looking for a variety of different information. If I wanted to just narrow that down to CUI-related information, I can pull that, and it will show me where that data exists, what devices it's sitting on. And more importantly, from a management perspective, it allows me to go ahead and put what I would call controls on the movement of that data, a critical component for that control. Meaning, folks, for instance, I may have need to look at that CUI data, but if I tried to email that out to someone outside the organization, we can set encryption controls that do not allow that data to be moved, meaning it won't interrupt the process, but the person on the other end, when they try to open up that information, will have encrypted data that they cannot open. And then, of course, it allows you to see how that data has moved as well. Very, very, very valuable solution. And lastly, I'm just going to touch briefly on our 889B services as well. So again, I'm going to go out to this particular organization. And you can see if I run, what our system does is it takes advantage of the scanning solution, and it allows the scan to identify all the devices in an organization and match those up to MAC addresses to see if any of this 889B related technology exists in that environment. Very valuable as a supporting backup tool when you are doing the attestations that you do not have this information in place. So not only can it help you within your own environment, but it also allows you to push that data out to your downstream vendors and make sure that they don't have any of that banned data in there as well. A really simple and easy solution and service to offer your clients as well. So with that, I'm going to pause here. As I've been going through the presentation, Chandi and perhaps TJ, I see a fair number of items in the chat that I have not gone into. If there's anything that I need to be addressing as it relates to that chat, I would ask you to pull that up. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and hopefully get back to the presentation, and we will take another brief poll for those of you that are participating. Again, the SureShield, some of the key benefits to our portal is it's a white label. It allows you to manage all your clients in one interface. It allows you to easily add new services. And again, it comes with a lot of workflow and excellent output reporting information for you, for your clients. As we talked about, the market opportunity is quite significant, and really to efficiently scale, you're going to need to have good technology in place to do that. We have a number of clients, as I mentioned, like you, coming to us to leverage this platform for themselves. And with that, we'd like to basically get to another poll question as we go ahead and enter into the Q&A section. So for those of you who are participating here today, if you would like to try out this platform or try out any of the solutions, trial them, I'm going to go ahead and launch that trial offer. Please go ahead and respond. We will be in touch with you and allow you to actually test this out for yourself. Excuse me, before you need to commit to any use of this. I would like to also note that some of the differences in terms of how we work with our customers. We do not require any long-term commitments. We believe that the solutions and the platform speaks for itself. And so we don't tie you down into any revenue commitments. We don't tie you down into any timing commitments in terms of use of the solution. What we have found is when we bring folks on, they stick with us because they're getting tremendous amounts of value out of that as well. And I see a number of you have indicated yes. For those of you who have indicated maybe later, we'll be following up with you on that. But let's go ahead and take any questions you may have. If you can go to the Q&A section of the webinar and direct any questions you may have to that. And I'll keep the poll open until we end the session. Question. I see one of the questions being, how is this priced? So the way in which we price this out, there is no price. Well, there's what I would tell you. There's no price for the use of the platform itself. If you don't have any customers on it, we have a very minimal commitment, monthly commitment, until you bring your first client on. And after that, once you have that first client, that minimum commitment goes away. Again, we've had a lot of clients that already have, customers they're planning to use this with, so that becomes a non-issue. The costs are dependent upon the modules. We provide a highly discounted price to the MSP provider, and then we allow you to bundle that in any way you want to take that out to the customers that you're working with. So in the case of the compliance solution, it's really based upon the number of frameworks that you may have activated for those clients. We generally haven't seen more than 2 or 3 that have been activated for a particular client, but the compliance solutions are based upon that. The security solution, the vulnerability and scanning solution, is based upon the number of assets that you are scanning at any given time, but it's only in the month in which you run those scans. So, for instance, if you had a cadence of running scans every other month, you would only be charged those months in which those scans are run. You are not charged in months where you haven't run a scan. And it's a very nominal fee and really based upon kind of a view in terms of how many assets are being evaluated within that environment. The similar process goes as it relates to the DLP, or the data loss protection solution. The number of what we would call endpoints that you're running that on a regular basis. And then the 889B is really a licensing cost based upon the number of vendors that need to be evaluated. So again, really simple, affordable pricing for you, and we can share that the partner agreement with you if you have a continued interest. I'm not seeing actually only a few questions. Let me leave this open again if there are any other questions that you may have. Otherwise, we will please go ahead, for those of you who are remaining, and answer, if you're interested in testing out the solution, please let us know. All of you will receive copies of this presentation, as well as copies or access to the webinar itself. And we will continue to make sure that you all are informed about new things that are happening with SureShield, any new webinars that we may have coming up as well. So with that, if there are no other questions, please, for those of you who had said yes, we'll be in touch with you shortly. You will receive a follow-up email that allows you to go ahead and schedule time, so please do that. If not, we'll be back in touch with you shortly to help you get that trial set up. Great. So with that, we'll buy you back a few minutes and appreciate you all attending the presentation here today. All the best, and thank you for your time.